I'm Mr. MegaManFan, and this week on the Homebrew Review, I'm going to start with a little back and forth I had with the author of this game because one, I don't think he would mind, and two, I think he would be as amused by it as the rest of you. So, here we go. Hey, John. I'm not sure if this is something you would be interested in, but I figured it would be worth reaching out. I've finished developing a homebrew NES game that I have officially launched a Kickstarter page for to produce physical copies of the NES cartridge. I'm hoping to get some exposure, so I thought of you. I've attached a copy of the ROM demo for you if you would like to take a peek. And here was my reply. Hey, it's Steve actually, aka Mr. MegaManFan, but you've definitely got the right dude if you want me to take a look at it for homebrew review. I'll make a video and probably have it scheduled by next Wednesday. If you want to send me any high resolution artwork assets for transitions to and from gameplay footage, you can attach those here. And he replied, I totally apologize about that, Steve. I'm thrilled you are willing to look at it. It's very much a passion project I've been working on for over a year now. I'm very excited the Kickstarter I launched last week managed to blow past my initial goal. And from there, I'll just leave the rest of the email out of it, but I think we've established that my name is not John, but his name is Dave, and he's from Cyberlink Promotions. So, Dave, big shout out to you, and big shout out to your homebrew game, and for meeting your Kickstarter stretch goal. Congratulations on that as well. I will include a link to the Kickstarter in the description below if you would like to check it out. There are still 32 days left to go as of Wednesday, and it's already fully funded, so you don't necessarily have to back it. It's going to get made either way, but if you like what you see here, that would be how to get a physical or a digital copy. And the good news is they've got some partners that they're working with that make that physical copy very much a reality. This is not a pie-in-the-sky dream. They have already contracted a studio that will be able to print and physically produce it, and they have experience in the genre of making homebrew NES games. They previously released a game in 2017 called Twin Dragons. The name Broke Studio may sound anti-confidence inspiring. If they're broke, how are they going to print an NES game? But they've done it before, so I think that's reasonably assured, for lack of a better word, assured that you would get a physical copy in 2022 if you back it. And I would say that you could also be assured because this is a working gameplay demo. It's not something that they were like, back it and then we'll start making the game. No, Dave had a game already before he even put up the Kickstarter, and I think that's a sign of confidence when you're looking at a homebrew game, is when you start out with a working product and then you just want the extra funds to finish it, tweak it, print up physical editions of it, instead of making people back a pie-in-the-sky dream of something you want to do that may not actually happen. The best Kickstarters usually have something to show for them, especially the homebrew games, so I tip my hat to Dave on that one as well. And last but not least, I have to mention, this is based on a webcomic that he worked on a decade ago. Now, you don't need to have read the webcomic to be able to play this game, but I have to admit there was some backstory that is referenced in the game in these dialogue excerpts that I clearly don't know. They are talking about past history with each other, people not trusting each other, goofy people doing goofy things like brewing a bunch of beer and then drinking it all, or buying a tractor and keeping it in a cave even though a tractor would be kind of useless in a cave. I mean, there's a lot of comedy that is tied to this webcomic that perhaps is funnier if you've read that webcomic. It's still amusing because it's a lot of non sequitur randomness that just tickles my funny bone, but at the same time, there's definitely a backstory that goes beyond this. And the fact that they're printing up a physical edition that'll come with a comic and a manual and a box. You'll get more information about all of those things in that. But you can also go to the Kickstarter, and he talks about the history of the webcomic. So this brings me back to something he said in the email. This video game, The Adventures of Panzer, he called it a passion project. And I definitely feel that when I'm playing this one for Homebrew Review. You can tell that this was something he took very seriously at a previous point in his life, and he and the original creators of his webcomic had moved on to different endeavors, but that spirit of it still lived with him. And when he discovered that NES Maker existed and he could take those characters that they created and resurrect them in the form of an 8-bit video game, that passion was reignited. And I love passion when you're programming a homebrew game, because you don't want to just make another clone of an already established title. You want to do something original and that is filled with your excitement to deliver it to the world. That doesn't always result in a good game, mind you, but at least it results in an original game. Although, I say that, and I mean this as both a compliment and perhaps a comment on NES Maker. I've not used NES Maker myself, so maybe this is a limitation of it, but it ends up feeling a little bit like Cave Story. That's not bad. I don't mind that it feels a little bit like Cave Story. The way the art is displayed, the tile scrolling, the size of the sprites. I don't know if that's just the way NES Maker is, or whether that was a design choice on Dave's part. I'm sure he may send me an email and tell me it was one or both, and I look forward to hearing back from him on that. But I would say that The Adventures of Panzer shows a lot of promise. If this is already a working demo at this point, imagine what the finished game could actually be. If I was going to make a few suggestions, though, the first thing I would say is maybe put a few more checkpoints in the game, because there were some cheap deaths that I experienced that caused me to have to replay long sections of a level. And if I was using save states, that wouldn't have been a problem, but I felt like to give you the authentic gameplay experience, I should play it as though I was playing it on an actual NES console. Even though I recorded the footage through an emulator, I wanted to presume that I didn't have an N8 EverDrive in the NES cart slot or any other kind of device which would allow me to save progress at any point during the game. So I just played it straight up like it was the physical print edition they planned to release in 2022. And if that's the case, I would definitely put more checkpoints in there, because grinding your way through a long section over and over again is a little bit much. And it makes it better or worse that there's a one-up every time I replayed that same section. So it's not like I would get a game over. I would just pick up that extra life and have to do it all again. Which makes me think he knew it was obsessively long, and that he put that one up in there on purpose, knowing that people would have to do it multiple times in order to make progress. And also, I suppose got tongue-tied there, sorry. It's me being a little bit of a grump by saying I had to replay it multiple times, because the challenge made it worth replaying multiple times. It shouldn't be too easy or too hard. I think it tends to be, well, not overly one or the other. It seems to strike the right balance, which is always a tricky thing to do, especially when you're designing a game for people other than yourself to play. Something that might be easy for you might be incredibly hard for someone else, and vice versa. you never know when you're making a game. You have to take your best guess. So I would also suggest to Dave, this is not something he has to do, just a suggestion, that maybe you could adjust the difficulty level, make it easier or harder depending on the person playing, but that could be too much programming to do, and I don't know how flexible NES Maker is with that. But if there was like easy, medium, and hard, maybe that would be a good accessibility option for players. And I suppose in the final version, there will be a little bit of history in the game so that the webcomic is not such a primary source for figuring out what's going on. I mean, there are some cutscenes at the beginning of the game that give us a little bit of the background, but maybe, this is again just a suggestion, maybe there would be a way to reference the webcomic from 10 years ago and not just the events of the present day that are 10 years later. Like, give us a little more of the background of these characters. We do know this much. Panzer is an arrogant buffoon, and he thinks he's a great military leader, but he's really not. And the people who serve under him suffer this fool out of loyalty or obedience, but they all think, well, we just have to put up with it because that's our lot in life. They're a little bit downtrodden, but they stalwartly manage to carry on despite it. And that's what I've done with this homebrew review. I've carried on to the end to show you all that it has to offer. I think it's a good game, and I'm glad the Kickstarter achieved the funding goal, and I look forward to seeing a physical version. Thanks, Dave, and thanks to all of you for watching.